Welcome to Obscure Epics Revealed, the channel that brings history to life, from the battles of the Romans to the legends of the Vikings. Here we dive into myths, cultures, and forgotten stories, concise, thrilling, and full of facts. Today we journey back to the bloody age of the Roman legions, to a Gaul engulfed in flames. A single man, weak, half dead, and burning with fever, stands against an entire army. His name, Publius Sextius Baculus, Centurion, veteran, and once Caesar's most loyal warrior. When the Eburones under Ambiorix stormed the camp of Atuatuca, all seemed lost, until a half-dead man grasped his sword and charged into the fray. Baculus, what drives a person to lift their sword one last time in the face of death? Was it duty? Was it pride? Or something only true warriors understand? Let's find out, now in this episode of Obscure Epochs Revealed. In 54 BC, Gaul trembled. The Eburones, led by their cunning chieftain Ambiorix, had thrown off the chains of Rome. Their rebellion swept across the land like a storm. Legions vanished in forests and swamps. Entire cohorts were wiped out. Amid this chaos lay the Roman camp of Atuatuca, a remote outpost surrounded by enemies, cut off from all reinforcements. There, Quintus Tullius Cicero, brother of the famous orator Marcus Tullius Cicero, commanded a handful of exhausted men. It was a garrison barely breathing, soldiers sick and wounded. Winter was coming, supplies were running low, and every day the Gauls crept closer. Among the sick lay a man whose name had once been spoken in the legions with reverence, Publius Sextius Baculus. A veteran of many battles, a centurion whom even Caesar had called one of the bravest. But now Baculus lay feverish in his tent, too weak to eat, too exhausted to speak. For 4 long days he had taken no food. Outside, the drums of the Eburones echoed, dull, like the heartbeat of death itself. Then came the morning when everything broke. Screams echoed over the palisades. The Gauls had breached the outer wall. Fire spread through the tents, and arrows rained upon the defenders. Men ran, stumbled, fell. The camp was on the verge of collapse, and somewhere between smoke and chaos, something stirred in the shadow of a tent. Baculus opened his eyes. The noise roared in his mind like thunder, and deep within him, where fever and exhaustion could not reach, something awoke. Duty, instinct, pride. He reached for the nearest weapon, a sword long dulled, and staggered outside. His body barely obeyed, but his will burned brighter than the flames around him. When the Gauls burst through the smoke, they saw him coming, half naked, pale, his skin glistening with fever. A dying man hurling himself at them. Baculus shouted the name of Rome, as if to remind the world itself to whom this land belonged. He struck, wildly, desperately, each blow an act of pure resolve. And something happened. The men around him, who had already lost hope, saw him fight, saw a half-dead centurion halt the storm, and they took up their weapons again. They fought, shoulder to shoulder, shouting his name, driving the enemy back. The Eburones faltered, their assault stalled. Cicero's men regrouped, and the impossible happened. The camp held. Baculus fell, grievously wounded, his sword still in his hand. Later they pulled him from the dirt, his face pale, his lips barely alive. But he had done it. His desperate stand had given the Romans the time they needed to recover, to survive. Weeks later, when Caesar himself heard what had happened, he had Baculus's name proclaimed, not as a martyr, but as a symbol, the man who rose half dead to save an army. No one knows what became of him, but in the legions they whispered for years of that day, the day a single dying warrior saved Rome from disgrace. The name Publius Sextius Baculus became legend, a flame in the fog of history, proof that courage can outlive the body itself. That was the story of Publius Sextius Baculus, the centurion who, half dead, saved a legion and became one of Rome's eternal legends. If you want to discover more forgotten heroes, lost battles, and true stories from the ancient world? Subscribe now, because every week we open a new chapter of history and bring the past to life.